This episode of the Time Chronicles features the rise and shattering of the false matrix. Welcome, warriors of light, wizarding manifestors, and seekers of knowledge, time chroniclers, and experiencers and explorers of the extraordinary. I'm Pigtail Gurl, and this is the Time Chronicles podcast.
I'm Starfire Tor. In each and every unique episode, we take you on a revealing journey through the hidden and forbidden secrets of the world and the multiverse. Pigtail Gurl is a globe-trotting, world-renowned healer, body talk expert, subliminal manifesting specialist, psychic intuitive, wizarding wonder, UFO experiencer, a DJ, a podcast editor, and an inner and outer beauty influencer. And last, but certainly not least, she's a loving wife and mom.
Starfire Tor is a scientist and precognitive psychic who discovered the core matrix, time shifts, coexisting timelines, timeline edits, the time shift effect, reality shift manifestation, the time shift living dead, the secret of the dreaming brain, and the unified field theory of psi. Her research also includes, but is definitely not limited to, UFOs, ETs, the paranormal, and the occult.
So, prepare to be informed and amazed.
It's what we do.
This episode of the Time Chronicles is all about the rise and shattering of the false matrix. The false matrix is not only negatively impacting the world today, it's been negatively impacting our world for thousands of years. To really understand this modern false matrix mega problem, it's essential that you understand its ancient beginnings.
We're going to explain exactly what the false matrix is, and that it's a product of the dark matter aberration's ancient Earth infestation. Along the way, you're going to learn about the ancient ETs versus ET battle to save the Earth, the ancient loss of the Earth's protective force field, and how the dark matter aberration created a hierarchy of soulless dark sorcerers and minions to meet its demands.
Also, along the way, you're going to learn that the false matrix has been shattering. Something very profound has been happening.
The DMA hides in a darkness of its own making, but a cosmic light is shining, and where that frequency and roar of light shines, no DMA-infested darkness can remain.
The problem. For thousands of years, Earth has existed in a false matrix timeline, also known as the wrong dominant coexisting timeline. The false matrix is a distorted and unsustainable version of our proper matrix timeline, aka the proper dominant coexisting timeline. Because of these dangerous conditions, Earth and all life on Earth is running out of time.
The cause of the problem. Thousands of years ago, Earth was infested by the dark matter aberration, the DMA for short. The source of all evil in the universe. The DMA acts as a cosmic vampire as it feeds on unprotected planets and habitats. The tactics used to feed the DMA caused the onset and continuation of Earth's false matrix. The solution to the problem: shatter the false matrix and remove the DMA influence.
This requires a proactive global awareness of the DMA infestation and tactics.
This will effectively cut off the DMA from its Earth food supply.
A cosmic vampire that cannot feed, cannot sustain itself or its planetary infestation. So, as we said, it's very, very important that in order to understand what's going on today in the world, you have to understand the origins of it. And the origins begin with a group of ETs, off-worlder ETs, known as the ET Earth Consortium, because they came to Earth and they bioengineered humans using their cosmic law that's called panspermia. And panspermia is when genetics of anything out there in space, they get hooked onto a roving planet, comet, asteroid, habitat, whatever. And usually there's some collision with a planet. And when conditions are right, life blooms. That's what panspermia is. And there's a legality to it. So every member of the ET Earth Consortium had their own genetics were already seeded onto planet Earth. I mean, this is absolutely the way it is all over the universe. So this is how it becomes rightful to do. If you're some ET off-worlder who tries to colonize a planet with their own DNA by just putting it there, that's not okay. Panspermia is really the number one way that life is helped along, guided, taught. Very important. It's the way it is. So we have these members of the ET Earth Consortium, and there are many of them. And this is why humans are so diverse, whether it's the way they look, the way they're able to think, where they live, how they live. Lots of different kinds of humans. Humans were never meant to be all the same. They are not clones. These are individual people. And the ET Earth Consortium came to a planet that already had a lot of life on it because it started millions before their races were even mature enough to go out into space. So by the time they are maturing as a people, all of the members, Earth is giving rise to dinosaurs and other such creatures completely out of control. This is really an example of genetics gone wild, the Earth. And the Earth itself is a very hostile place. We've got the earthquakes and the volcanoes and just unhealthy things for life. And then all of a sudden, boom, here comes this crash collision of genetics on the planet and no one to guide it. So there have been through the history of the planet a lot of catastrophes, generally of asteroids hitting the planet, causing the destruction of a lot of the life that's there. Then other life pops up. This is one of the ways that most of the dinosaurs left their mortal coil. Not all of them. Some of the dinosaurs are still here, such as birds. But the ET Earth Consortium, by the time they came, there was a very primitive type of creature that they were able to utilize to begin jumpstarting the human race in all of its varieties. Okay. Now, before we get to the next panel, before we get there, I just want to advise everyone that it might be a little shocking. You're going to see a member of the ET Consortium on the left that might shock some of you. Okay, why don't you put that next panel up, please?
Okay, here it comes.
All right. You can see there what is called by humans a reptilian, and then on the right, what humans called a Nordic. Yes, they exist. They are part of the ET Consortium. These are not the names they call themselves, but since this is what the human race has been calling them in modern times, this is what I'm going to use for the show. Now, this is really, really important to understand. Just like not all humans are the same, not all ETs are the same, even if they're from the same species. And that's the way it is with the reptilians or the reps or the Draco, whatever humans call them these days. And you really cannot tell them apart unless you know them, unless you understand, what they're doing. The difference between these two different types of reps that look just almost exactly the same is that the ET Earth Consortium reps have no interaction with the DMA, the dark matter aberration. The dark matter aberration infests beings and planets.
Mm-hmm.
And it does so as a form of control. The members of the ET Earth Consortium, all members of the ET Earth Consortium are free of DMA influence or infestation. And that includes the reptilian members of the ET Earth Consortium. They're free of it.
And when you talk about cosmic laws, are these laws that you say are existing within sort of like divine laws written into the universe, or are these ethical laws that they give themselves to live by?
I believe they are the ethical laws that they give themselves. And I believe that they interpret it as part of what's called the spark of life,
Mm-hmm.
SOL.
Mm-hmm.
Those are words that I put together, that I coined through my research. You know, when you go back to the core matrix and the destruction of the original universe that we came from, which was taken in by what's called a dark hole complex. That's normal too. Universes come, universes go, stars come, stars goes, galaxies come, galaxies go, planets come, planets go. It's the way of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the cycle of life. And the spark of life is there so that if you even have a remnant, a genetic remnant of something that was created from an earlier time, from an earlier universe, under the right conditions, it can bloom again. Under the right guardianship and nurturing, it can bloom again. So when the ET Earth Consortium used the cosmic law of panspermia, that's ethical, based on SOL, the spark of life. So they know that they can go and they can nurture their own genetics, because their own genetics originates from the original spark of life, however far back that goes, however many universes that goes. I don't know that answer.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I'm not even sure that they do. Okay. But that's how it works. And it's an agreed upon system. So if you're as sophisticated as the ET Earth Consortium are, and they are, then you work via the cosmic law of panspermia. So when they come here, the ET Earth Consortium's intention is to set the Earth back up on a proper development course. Natural evolution is real, but on Earth, as on many, many other planets, there is a guidance factor. And our guidance factor are the ET Earth Consortium. Now, I should also tell you that by the time humans got to be to a stage of development where they were free thinking and they were being taught and they could do things instead of just being sort of lower end physical beings, the ET Earth Consortium worked and lived among them very often. And they never, ever, ever set themselves up as lords, leaders, controllers, gods, none of that business. They never told a falsehood to humans. Humans always knew that they came from other star systems.
Do you think that's who the ancient Egyptians were having contact with? Because obviously the Egyptians, even that we know today, are only a remnant of an ancient culture that seemed to have connection with beings that looked in different ways, and then perhaps as it degraded after time, having lost contact with them maybe for a while, that they turned it into stories of gods.
Right. Well,
some
actually,
mythology around it.
Yes, you're correct at a certain level, but this contact predates Egyptians.
Right. Way back.
Yes, but the Egyptians that are there today, their ancestors from the area definitely had contact. There is a memory of it. It's not a very clear memory. It's like you have the Sumerian clay tablets that talk about the people from the stars.
The Anunnaki, yes.
Exactly. And then you have Native Americans. I think, if I'm not mistaken, every tribe.
Every ancient tribe.
Every ancient tribe, every ancient nation.
Yeah.
Has some sort of memory of the star people.
Definitely. And Celtic people as well.
All of them.
Yeah.
They all do.
I bet the druids had it as well.
Well, by the time you get to the druids, they're out of the loop, sort of. It's what came before the druids, which were the Tuatha De Danann people.
Mm-hmm.
These were the remnants of the star people. The Tuatha had as close a connection to the star people as any. So here you have this ET Earth Consortium. They are here developing the human species, having to deal with the fact that there are still remnants of the out of control pre-ET Earth Consortium life forms that have developed. I mean, the asteroids and other catastrophes, volcanoes, earthquakes. There was even a point where another planet completely mushed into the Earth. And now the Earth is actually made up of two different planets. And this is actually a matter of historic record. Even today, when scientists look at the planet, they go, whoa, wait a minute. They can see that there are completely different planets here. It's a very interesting thing. And I'm hoping that scientists will one day bring this out more and talk more about it. But this is a known thing that I'm speaking of.
And maybe as well, I heard stories about it perhaps being more swampy at first, the planet way back there. It was more swampy all over and humidity in the air. And then maybe the moon was used to bioengineer or the planet and then change the waters so we had more like oceans with tides.
Well, the ET Earth Consortium terraformed quite a bit of the
Earth.
That's it.
Terraformed was the word I was looking for.
Right. They terraformed as much of the Earth as they could without triggering off massive earthquakes and volcanoes. And one of the ways that they were able to do this, plus to bring, there's a natural method that they use all through it, which is using the waters on the planet to churn the spark of life. And the moon that they helped to terraform, moonform, they took it from something that was already in our solar system, moved it over here, and made it to be just perfectly positioned and shaped so that it performs many services that not only help life to keep on forming and forming properly, but it also helps to protect the planet from aggressive solar activity.
But I've heard other people who have opinions on the moon, and they suggest that the moon might be something evil controlled by negative reptilians, to control the minds of humanity. What do you say to those people?
It's bunk, nonsense. I know where they got that idea from. I'm very familiar with the origins of that idea. And I really want people to stop. The ET Earth Consortium, as I said, fashioned and positioned the moon. Nobody is using the moon to control anything on the planet, such as the brains of any living creatures. They're using the moon to help churn the water, so to speak, so that the spark of life can carry on.
Very interesting.
And in fact, a big part of our show is as we share the real story of how the false matrix got going, which also includes the origin of souls and how they integrate with humans. That's also part of the story. They're going to learn just how fantastically wonderful humans can be, were made to be, and that humans were always intended to be the caretakers of the planet.
Yeah, that's why I call us wizards.
Yeah, definitely. Exactly.
Wizards in training.
Well, yeah. Well, as we're looking at, and this is the takeaway that I want people to have when they're looking at both the reptilian ET on the left and the Nordic on the right, neither one of these two beings, nor the two that I showed prior to in the panel, no one is superior over the other. You see, each member of the ET Earth Consortium has certain genetics that they contributed to the overall human development. So we are a part of all of them. They are all our ancestors. We are all their descendants, and they look at the human race as their children, because that's exactly who we are, their children.
Right.
Okay?
Yes.
All right. So let's move into panel 6. All right, now things start to get dicey.
Pew, 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 pew.
Yes, a lot of that. On planet Earth, this is where the dark matter aberration, the DMA, enters the scene in the worst of ways. And this is where those other reptilian ETs, the ones that are infested and controlled by the DMA, come to planet Earth. This is thousands and thousands of years ago. Okay. Now, at this time that this terrible thing happens, humans were on their way to being quite independent of the ET Earth Consortium. The ET Earth Consortium had taught them how to build fantastic things, including defense of all manner. So the dark matter aberration is a cosmic vampire. It's the source of all evil in the universe, and it feeds on various planets and habitats. We'll get more into that in a little bit. But right now, what you need to know is that the DMA infested ET reptilians were and still are the front people for the DMA. And it searches out for places that the DMA can set up as a feeding station for itself. And Earth just happened to be ripe, just the perfect type of energy, lots of new souls integrating with new beings. It was the perfect storm. So the ET reps that were DMA infested attacked the planet, and the ET Earth Consortium rose up to defend it. A lot of very sophisticated weaponry here. And the ultimate goal of the DMA infested reptilians was to breach the protective force field that the ET Earth Consortium had set up. That protective force field was set up specifically to keep out the DMA. I mean, the DMA is known about all over the universe. I mean, any sophisticated ET knows all about it. And they all set up these protective force field, and they integrate into the natural magnetic force fields that any planet has that protects it from excessive solar energy. Because when you don't have that protective magnetic force field up, the sun's energy can just strip all the oxygen off of the planet's surface. It's happened to planets already in our solar system. So it's known that happens. So the protective force field that the ET Earth Consortium had built was integrated into the magnetic force field. And during this battle, this war that was ET versus ET, the DMA ET reps were able to take down Earth's protective force field. That's the one that kept out the DMA. And the moment that happened, the DMA energy, along with the ET DMA infested reps, they infested the Earth. They were able to make their way onto the Earth. And that is the beginning of how the false matrix was created. Now, next panel, please. So this war between the ETs wasn't just to battle to save planet Earth, but it also became a solar-wide conflict. And that's what you're seeing here. Next, please. So when the DMA and the DMA-infested ET reps came onto the planet itself, and it began to set up what are called, and we'll get into this, DMA minions, sub-minions, thralls, puppet masters, and dark sorcerers. That's how the DMA works to take control of a planet as a feeding ground. That's what it's all about, a feeding ground. Because of this behavior and because of the instability of the planet to begin with, and because the protective force field was taken down, planet Earth was destroyed. And this set up several things. One of them was something called the time looping planet ending nuke problem. I call it nuke because that's what Earth is dealing with today. But back then, the tech weaponry was way more powerful and somewhat different than nuke. But
laser guns.
well, you know, I drew them in as lasers. It's energy very similar to what's going on the sun, which, by the way, is a star, in case people didn't know that. The sun is a whole bunch of combustible nuclear hadronic energy exploding out with coronal mass ejections and solar winds, and magnetic filaments are going kaboom all the time. The sun's very alive and it's our life. But if we don't have these protective force fields and we don't have that terraform moon in place, we wouldn't be here.
Can I ask you a question at this point about this protective force field? Now,
sure.
After the wrong dominant coexisting timeline, we'd been thrown into that. Why didn't, at that moment, the ET Consortium try to rebuild the force field? Or did they have to wait until humans were able to take part in it for it to stick?
As you know, part of our show is going to deal with the rebuilding of that protective force field. But at that time, now I don't know every single answer to this, okay? But I think I have pieced together exactly why they were unable to. First of all, their forces were diminished. Now, both of the ET Earth Consortium are still on the planet. The ET DMA infested reps are still on the planet. This war still continues to this day. So I believe that more than likely, you know, they either tried to rebuild this or for some reason they were prevented from doing it, but it's all going to have to do with logistics, some sort of logistics that they were very aware of that I'm not aware of at this exact moment in time, prevented them, because obviously if they could have, they would have. But as we'll see later on in the show, when the protective force field is actually rebuilt and activated, a whole other set of human circumstances are in play. So we will get there in a very short period of time.
Yeah, and at this point, I'd just like to add that you're getting your information due to your own psychic abilities and ability to connect to the core matrix and use your natural born gifts, isn't it, Starfire, to get this information? That's where you're getting it from.
Well, that's only part of it. My research, I'm a pretty smart person. I have a pretty high intellect, and I discovered the core matrix. I discovered all of this, and it's a step procedure. As I went deeper and deeper and deeper into it, I'm a scholar. I was able to discover these things and put them together. I didn't do it in a vacuum. There's a lot of research that went before mine by people who discovered the Sumerian clay tablets, who were able to decipher part of them. We have all over the world pieces of our history hiding in plain sight, and some of it not so plain sight. It's there. I'm able to put a big picture together. Part of my skills and abilities and talents are I solve puzzles. I solve problems.
Yes,
okay?
you do.
Yeah. So my left brain and my right brain are not separated. They work together as one unit. And that's just how I'm made. You know, I didn't say, hey, I got to make myself this way. I'm born this way. So
that's it. But you're not sitting there channeling aliens or anything. This is all coming from your own unique set of abilities that you use to research and to gain your information.
Right. Now, I do not channel aliens. Real aliens don't channel. They don't.
No, I just wanted to put that out there in case people don't really know you and they're new to the podcast. You're not sitting there channeling this info from aliens in your front room.
Blockbuster piece of information here It also doesn't mean I haven't talked to some ETs. I mean, it would be pretty astounding for anybody to think that I know all of this and don't have some sort of contact.
Yes, indeed. But it's your own kind of contact, not a channeling type of contact.
No, not at all. I'm talking about
it's
authentic,
real, authentic,
authentic. I just don't want that to become the story.
Yes,
okay?
Exactly.
So it's all of these factors, and just say, I know the situation well. So I'm sharing it, and Pigtail Girl and I are sharing it together. She's a very smart lady, and now it's time to look at the backstory to the dark matter aberration, the DMA. You see, in any struggle in life, if you have a nemesis, a foe, and they're the ones causing the problem, the only way that you can really defeat it is you have to understand the nemesis, understand the foe. And that's what we're doing now. Is we're going to give you the backstory of what exactly dark matter aberration is. And once you understand that, you'll understand a whole lot more about what's going on today. So here you can see on the left, that's my version of what dark matter looks like. Looks like cells or nerves, macrocosm, microcosm.
Exactly.
That's how the universe works. Yeah. And on the right is the dark matter aberration. Now, dark matter is what's called the glue that holds everything together in the universe. And that's true. And the reason they call it dark is not that there's anything wrong with it or it's evil. It's not. It's dark because the human eye cannot see it. So it's dark. It's like veiled, cloaked, dark. Okay. But the dark matter aberration, which is part of dark matter, it's damaged. It's hurt. And it's missing part of its connectivity. You can see it. Those black holes in on the right in the dark matter aberration are not in dark matter. So even though the dark matter aberration is part of dark matter, performs as dark matter, it's got this disconnection to it, and it's caused a confusion with that part of dark matter to where it's picking up on the spark of life and wanting to heal itself because it knows it's not right. The dark matter aberration, DMA, knows that it's damaged. But beyond that, it's confused. It doesn't really understand what's going on. It's just going along for the ride with dark matter. But it has this overarching drive to heal itself. And so what it did was, weirdly, it reversed the function of dark matter, which is to hold life together, make life possible, whether it's a form, soul, planet, galaxy, whatever. The dark matter aberration reversed that and started to use that same dark matter function to take energy, hoping that if it took energy, it could then absorb it and fill in these holes. And once it filled in these holes, it's going to be just like dark matter. But it doesn't work that way. So over, gazillions of years, the dark matter learned tactics on how to go from planet and habitat to habitat. And it will absolutely drain. A planet has its own soul, and it will take that. It will take the souls that are on the planet, humans, animals, plants, everything. Okay, everything. And the dark matter aberration gives nothing good back. And once it's absorbed a planet of what's there, it leaves a shell, a hulk, and it moves on to the next. The ET DMA reptilians as the front they help to set up the planet for the taking. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let's move on to the next panel, which is going to make what I just talked about really sink in.
Okay, the difference between an undamaged brain and a damaged brain.
Right.
So on the left, we're looking at an undamaged, well-functioning brain here.
Right.
The intact brain structure leads us towards good memory, organizational skills, clear thinking, ability to perform tasks properly, good judgment, which is very important, a steady temperament, agility, and to strive towards honesty.
Right. That's how the brain was, set up to function. Then when you look over at a dementia brain, whether it's Alzheimer's, that's a type of dementia, you can see it's damaged. Like the DMA, the dark matter aberration, its connectivity is missing.
Mm-hmm.
Big black hole there. Okay.
Yeah.
So, when this happens to a human or any other animal, this is a damaged brain, and it's not going to function well. It's very poorly functioning. So what you have here is a loss of the brain structure connectivity, and this leads to general confusion, memory loss. People who have this start to lie. They do it because in their brain, they are searching for some sort of connectivity. And when they can't find it, they will grab at whatever comes to them. And they don't really know that they're telling lies, but that's what they do.
Yeah.
They start making up stories about their past and things that they did. It makes no sense. And that's what they do. So they also have connected to that poor judgment. They're unable to perform simple tasks. They can get very, very agitated, angry very quickly. I mean, I think that should be obvious why that would happen.
Mm-hmm.
They also get a stiff walking gait because the brain that controls that is also, being damaged. And on top of that, they can have delusions of all manner.
Right.
So when you have different forms of dementia, it's not just about memory loss. It has all of these other problems that come with it. Well, the dark matter aberration has the same type of problem. It's confused and it's doing bad things. It's made up things that it thinks it can do, and it's reversed how the dark matrix works, and that's what the dark matrix is.
Right.
Okay, so let's move on to the next panel.
The Earth's protective force field.
Right. Well, before the DMA infested the planet, before the DMA infested reptilian ETs came to forge the path for the DMA Earth infestation, the Earth protective force field is what the ET Earth Consortium had built. And this is just my version of what it would look like as the best that my artwork could be. But basically, it's a series of frequencies and harmonics that resemble, rainbow colors, because color is frequency, and vibration, except it has more colors than the human eye can see. Okay. So, and then this is all placed together in a geometric sphere, very much looking like this, except this one is shown as white, except that geodesic sphere is made up of all of the colors of this rainbow frequency. And once that is placed all around the planet, that becomes a force field. This is what Earth's protective force field is. And its specific role is to keep out the dark matter aberration. That's it. And like I said, it's integrated into Earth's already existing magnetic shield. So this is the protective force field that went down during the ET versus ET war thousands of years ago. This is how the DMA made its way onto the planet, and this is where our troubles began. Next panel, please.
The dark matter aberration.
Right. Okay. Now, this is, again, my artistic view of what our Earth looks like right now. The Earth protective force field is gone, and surrounding it is the dark matter aberration. And as a vampire energy using Earth as a feeding station, it has these energy tentacles that go out and begin to form its own field that goes all around the globe into everything. And over thousands and thousands and thousands of years that it's been doing this, it has interwoven itself into every facet of the planet and life on Earth. It's into everything. Okay?
Okay, yeah. I think people feel it. We can feel that.
Right. Yeah. Now, as you'll learn a little bit later in the podcast, the Earth's original ET Earth Consortium protective force field was rebuilt. That happened in late 2021. And it happened with the help of the core matrix timeline edits and a group of humans who came up to speed on what that protective force field was, had the instruction plan, and had the intent and the energy to put it out there. In other words, humans can now not only rebuild and reactivate our protective Earth force field, but we can maintain it. And now that the Earth protective force field is back up and running, it's never going away again. And this is the biggest, kickoff to the shattering of the false matrix. Okay.
But it's causing like a kind of die-off symptoms, I guess.
Here's the thing. If you would please go on to the next panel.
Okay.
This is another view of this blackout, grayout that the DMA has up around our planet instead of the protective force field. But now that the protective force field is absolutely back up and activated, to answer your question, Pigtail Girl, this is what has happened. The DMA's hierarchy of dark sorcerers, minions, sub-minions, and thralls depend on their ability to keep going, to keep the food table going for the DMA. They are constantly being re-energized by DMA energy. It's just the way it works. That's where they get their powers from. But now that the ET protective force field is back up and activated, no further DMA energy can enter our planet. Yeah, that's a big one. Let that sink in. No further DMA energy can enter our planet. Of course, it does also lock in the DMA energy that's already here. Mm-hmm. Well, that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. Because in order to keep the false matrix going, the DMA's little workers are using up the DMA energy that's here. They're using it up. They don't have replenishment. And so just like any vampires, they cannot sustain themselves for very long. And this is another reason why the false matrix is shattering. The false matrix itself, because we used to live in the proper matrix. And I just want to put in this here because this is a real pet peeve of mine. People, please stop trying to get out of the matrix. You have been suckered into believing that a movie called The Matrix is real. I know who started that. Person is wrong. Okay. We're supposed to be in a matrix created by the core matrix. That's how we live. We're free-willed in the proper matrix. but not the false matrix.
Everything has a matrix behind it, really,
Yes.
A blueprint or so, a holding pattern to keep it in place.
That's all it is.
Yeah.
And I named it the matrix. That came from me because it makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I only changed it to the core matrix after the movie came out. And people were getting very confused about my real science and science fiction. And it took me about a year to figure it out, but I renamed the matrix the core matrix. And once I did that and explained it, that ended the confusion.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, TV movies, though, have a profound effect on the psyche because seeing is believing.
Okay. I love the movie The Matrix. I do. I also love Back to the Future. But I can enjoy movies like that, understanding that that isn't the way that time travel works, and that's not the way that the actual matrix works. But it's got people thinking and talking, and that's wonderful. The problem happens is that when certain people adapt that as a reality, and then they cause people to wrongly think that they have to get out of the matrix. No, in the movie, you have to get out of the matrix. In real life, you want to get out of the false matrix and back into the proper matrix. And every time, every single one of you goes into that, we got to get out of the matrix, you are actually feeding the DMA.
Right. Yeah.
Every single time you go, we got to get out of the matrix. Oh, this portal's opening. This thing is happening. This is going to help us get out of the matrix. What you're actually doing is you are ensuring that it's going to be even harder to get out of the false matrix.
Yes.
Okay.
Because delusional ways of thinking are part of the DMA energetic.
Well, it's delusional by accident. These are very well intentional people, I'm very sure, who want to help this planet get out of the false matrix. But you cannot do it by believing something that isn't real. And so we're telling you in this show what's real. Please act accordingly. Believe accordingly. Now, the false matrix, we got thrown into a false matrix when the DMA's little workers, the minions and so forth, began to create a planet that would grow the type of food supply that the DMA consumes in its false belief that it can heal itself. All right. And the DMA feeds on the worst thoughts and actions of humans and other life forms. That's what it feeds off of. So in order to have a good crop, the DMA workers have to, alter the way that the planet functions, the way that people think, the way that people act, to create the worst of what humans can be. And once this was put into motion, and thousands of years later, it's sort of standard operating procedure, SOP, of how they do it. There are tactics that do it, that tear the planet apart, that tear the people on the planet apart, so that they can create this negative energy that feeds the DMA. And this is how we got thrown into the false matrix. This is why we have a false matrix. Our proper matrix was shredded, and it remains shredded to this day. That's why we're in such trouble. But this shredding, it's unsustainable. Why? Because of the weaponry and technology that the world has today. The threat of nukes is very real. Take it very seriously. And it hooks into a time loop from the original ET versus ET war, when we lost Earth's protective force field and the DMA infested the planet. This time looping problem is a clear and present danger right now. The threat is not just, veiled. The threat is in your face, verbally, in your face.
Yes.
So,
indeed.
Right. So the false matrix, which supports this type of behavior, is unsustainable, because if this time loop goes into action, the whole planet's gone. We're all gone. So what does it matter? Whether you're in a false matrix or this matrix, there is no matrix left for our planet.
Yeah, you really did get out the matrix. Well done. It doesn't exist anymore.
Right. There are no winners.
No.
There are no, except the DMA walks away.
It's a sabotaging energy. It's like my little daughter loves to run in and do this funny thing where she goes, sabotage, where she just tries to get in the way of whatever I'm doing. And it just reminds me of that. It's just like, oh, life was nice. Sabotage.
Right. Well, so regardless of what you think about a false matrix or the proper matrix, it really doesn't matter, because the false matrix is unsustainable. We've gotten to that point. It's the end of the road for the false matrix. So in order to save the planet, we want to, instead of just going into smithereens, we want to be able to get us back into a proper matrix existence. And that's what's happening right now. This is why the false matrix is shattering. All right. This is where we're going to talk about the soul. And for purposes of the focus of this show, we're going to talk about human souls, souls on Earth, and the souls of any ETs that interact with or live on Earth. That's it. The soul is made of stardust. And that's just the way it is. It's made of the same materials as wherever it was made in the universe. The soul can come in any number of colors and sizes. It can be a solid color. It can be a mix-up of colors. It can be the very oldest of souls is quite robust, and there's a lot of it. The younger of souls, they are less robust, thinner. A soul can be a loner, or they can live in groups. And the soul is a big attractor of the DMA, because the DMA feeds on it. And the DMA searches for not the robust souls, because the DMA really cannot take on a robust, really old soul. But so it searches for the younger souls. Now, souls are always being manufactured, just like galaxies and planets and suns and everything are being manufactured through the spark of life. It's an ongoing evolutionary thing. Souls are as well. And that's why you have them in all stages of age and development. Okay. So next panel, please. So here you can see my artistic rendition of what a robust soul, this is a multicolored robust soul, would look like. And it's also important to understand, I know that quite a few of you do understand that a soul is not squished into your physical frame, that a soul is integrated with your physical frame and your brain. And that's absolutely correct. The soul, as it integrates, but does not squish into the form, it's just not possible. There's just too much to a soul for it to do that, first of all. And it's not in its best interest to do that, not for the body and not for the soul. The soul, when it integrates with a physical form, even if it integrates with a planet, it has to remain expanded beyond the physical that it is integrating with.
Yeah.
Okay. Next panel, please. Now, here is my version of what a less robust soul looks like. This is a much younger soul, less experienced, less expansive. It's no less a soul, and it is attracted to newly formed physical beings for obvious reasons. A robust soul already has most of their physical integrations picked out and they're in motion. Because even though humans live very short physical lives, it wasn't always that way. There was a time when humans, just like ETs do now, can live hundreds to thousands of years. And so we still do have some very old, robust souls on the planet who have very good memories. But most of the souls that are here are still young. I mean, young can be 1,000,000 years old. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you can see that these younger souls, and they can be in any color, but are generally not multicolored. So these younger, not robust souls are not as expansive. And this is what the DMA targets. They can see them, they can sense them, they go right to them.
Easy
And
pickings.
easy pickings, absolutely. And so a big part of its infestation of the earth is it goes after these young souls, and it consumes the soul from the outside of the body moving in. So it consumes the soul right up to the physical form, and then it goes into the physical form and consumes that until you have a shell. Okay. Now, let's see. If you could move on to the next panel, please. As you can see, I've made a bunch of pretty robust souls into as many of the colors that I could. And remember, there are colors out in the universe that humans can't see. So this is just what humans can see.
Right.
So each and every one of these souls is equal to the other. It doesn't matter what the color is at all. And the color of a soul does not define the gifts or the abilities that that soul has. Only humans believe that. When you see an aura around a human, first of all, Kirlian photography is not photographing the soul. Please get that straight.
I'm glad you said that, because I bet a few people at home will be wondering about that.
Yeah. Well, I know it's popular in some niches in the spiritual community, but Kirlian photography is not a photograph of the soul, and neither is anyone else putting out photographs saying, I can photograph your soul. It is not true. It can be your electrical aura, and you get the same thing off of photographing a brick. The soul does have color. And when a soul integrates with a body, which is also the brain, that exercise alone can alter the coloring, shading, hue of a soul for a while until the body, the brain, and the soul become acclimated to each other and get in sync. When the physical form and the soul, the integrated soul, get in sync, that is when they both get to grow. Because the purpose of the soul and the body is to mature, really.
Yeah, you'd hope so.
So the soul has to have the physical experience, in this case, the human experience, and the human experience has to experience the soul. This is how they grow. This is not ascension.
Yeah, and it's not an illusion either. Everything is real.
Absolutely
as real as
real.
it is. What you're experiencing is real. You know it's real because you're experiencing it.
Right. This is real. This is the way it works all over the universe. It doesn't matter what planet you're from. It doesn't matter what and who you are. This is the way it works. We are having an integrated experience with the universe. We are stardust.
Mm-hmm.
We are the universe. And we are in physical form because we are supposed to be having a physical experience integrated with the universe through the soul. Now, because we are genetically bioengineered, part of that genetics and the DMA does have ancestral memory. And just exactly how much of that ancestral memory someone remembers is an individual thing. Mostly humans have very little connection to their ancestral memory. In other words, other than say people who call themselves star seeds or walk-ins, you really don't have that much of an ancestral memory, particularly if everything that we're talking about today is like new information or doesn't fit in with what you believe things to be. That means you are not yet connected to your actual ancestral selves. But now that you're now that you're watching the show, you can be, because you have to knock out stuff that is not actually the real deal, and you have to edit in the real deal. So we are in physical form because we are supposed to be in physical form. We're not supposed to be leaving this physical form until we have integrated with our soul, integrated with the universe, and have set things right, particularly on planet Earth, putting us back into the proper matrix. And believe me, even once we are fully back into the proper matrix, we have millions of years to go before there's going to be any sort of ascension from the physical. Please understand that. Please stop trying to run away from your obligation, why you are here, why you were born, and your synchronization with your integrated soul is what connects you to the greater universe, so that you can be this wondrous human being who has all their gifts. You know, when the ET Earth Consortium bioengineered humans, and did have a little something else to do with helping to figure out what to do with life and animals that were already here. They've had a lot of bioengineering with the animals on the planet too. They put what I call gates down on the brain. The brain is a very important part of the human experience and the integration of the soul, and we'll get into that in a moment. But gates were put down that shut off humans from being able to access higher levels of knowledge. And this is because during these physical development processes and the integration, soul integration, synchronization process, the human and the brain can just work with, absorb so much, or else you're really messing up that human. It's more than they can bear. It'll send them into a very strange, disconnected space. So these gates are opened as the human, physical human, integrates properly with the soul, and they get more knowledge, more ability to function, and gates open up. So basically, by you watching this show, we're actually helping you to open up the next gate. Because if you don't know about the core matrix, if you don't know about everything that we're talking about here, you don't have that gate open. And this is the next gate to where you want to be. This is your aha moment. Okay. So we're opening up a really important gate. Okay. Let's move on to the next, please.
Okay. The brain is the interface to the core matrix. This interface connection begins when the human brain's neural tube closes, and the forming brain separates into three parts: cerebrum, brainstem, and cerebellum.
Right. Mm-hmm. Now, this is really, really important. Okay. Now, in the upper three images, you'll see on the left, that's my rendition of what the core matrix looks like. And it's rotating around, it is within the ergosphere that rotates around the mega black hole that absorbed our original universe. That's how it looks today. Okay. In the middle one, you can see my rendition of many coexisting timeline Earths that are streamed by the core matrix. The core matrix streams out every single coexisting timeline that is out there. Mm-hmm. And every single coexisting timeline all exist at the same time. That's why they coexist, but they're separated by their individual frequencies. And as the core matrix does a timeline edit of any sort, it creates a new coexisting timeline. Now, when the DMA infested the planet and it threw our planet into a false matrix, the core matrix is still doing timeline edits, but they're going into the false matrix. Why? Because the core matrix has been using timeline edits for thousands of years in an attempt to shatter the false matrix and get us back into the proper coexisting timeline edit. So that's what's going on there. And the core matrix and the brain interface with each other. And this is what allows people to perceive everything. It's where dreams come from. It's where psychic comes from. It's where perceptions of coexisting timeline comes with precognition. It's how the core matrix gets us information. It's why it is that you're able to watch this show and to be on planet Earth as a physical person integrated with a soul. Okay, now, the key part of this is the human brain's neural tube closing and the forming brain separates into three parts: cerebrum, brainstem, cerebellum. You see, when the core matrix plugs into the brain and the flow of information begins, there is a point at which it happens, and that is when the brain is at a certain point of development. This is before it takes its first breath. This is when the core matrix plugs in. This is when the communication between two parties begin. This is also at the point where a soul can realize that there is a physical form available to integrate. Now, a soul can find and integrate with a human at any point in its life phase, whether it's in the pre-breath development or post-breath development, at any time. But once this soul integration begins, it starts with the attraction to the brain. It starts with the brain. It hooks into the core matrix. The souls are very integrated into the core matrix because the core matrix gave us our universe. And then we're off and running. This is how it works, okay? Now, next panel, please. So the early development and activation of this physical brain, which is on the right, this is it being activated. This emits the frequency that attracts the souls. And when a compatible soul chooses, it integrates with the brain and it's attracted physical form. So this is, you see the brain lighting up. It doesn't matter how young in development, it's just as long as the three lobes are out there and the neural tubes are closed, this is the brain starting. This is the whole kit and caboodle there. Okay, next panel, please.
I just have to say, I like the pink brain.
Well, the brain is sort of pinkish, and so I lit it up. I lit it up to demonstrate what I was talking about. Okay, now we're going to get into a whole other part of the false matrix.
The good stuff.
Well, it's all good stuff, but yeah, this is the down and dirty nitty gritty. This is how the DMA turns a perfectly wonderful human into one of its minions. Okay, I talked a little bit about it, but here's a visual. In the left image, you see it's a human in its physical form, and you see a young soul integrating with it, and there it is, perfectly normal. In the second image, you see the same physical form, but has been totally drained of its soul. There's no soul there. The body's still alive. The body does not need a soul to be alive. It does not need a soul to function. It just needs a soul to function all the way. Okay. Not every person in this world has a soul. It doesn't mean they're bad, but they're lacking the entire human soul experience. But for the purposes of the false matrix, we go to the third, and you can see there is that same human form, and the dark matter aberration has filled this human form with its own energy.
Just like a vampire.
Yep. And so when you look at the second frame, that's what a thrall would look like, and possibly a sub-minion. They just follow instructions. They do what they're told. They believe what they're told. They have no discernment abilities. But a minion has a DMA program in it. And it goes into the brain. It goes through the brain into the rest of the body. And so a minion is kind of the face of the DMA. And because it has no soul, It is filled with DMA. This is evil. The minions are the ones who set up the planet to be feeding grounds that make it possible to create a world that is so awful that it creates lots of negative energy and actions for the DMA to feed on. That's a minion's purpose. And in trade, the minion gets its little physical heart's desire, power and money and whatever else. So that doesn't mean that everybody with power and money is a minion. They are not.
Can I just ask at this point, though, if your soul has been consumed, do you still have your own identity awareness?
You have your identity minus the identity of your integrated soul. So you're not going to be spiritual. You're not going to have a connection to the universe outside of your physical form. That's part of the DMA control mechanism. Mm-hmm. It is all, everything about a minion is service to self.
And then when that person would die, would they still have something that would go on to the next life existing in their body, or has that been completely consumed? That's what's been consumed, that energy.
Yeah, it's gone.
It's gone. They die to the dust, into the earth again.
Yeah, if you don't have that soul integration, whatever life you're living is it. There's no resurrection of any sort.
So not much of an upside there for the minions.
They don't know. You see, when you don't have a soul, you don't know what you're missing.
That's it.
And they can pretend to be spiritual. Some minions have set themselves up as, rulers of various belief systems.
Oh, I bet.
They have. but they're just faking it. It's just a control mechanism to feed the DMA, to keep the feeding planet going. And that's what put us into the false matrix. So here on the right, you have a DMA-filled physical human minion, working brain. Now, the way that the DMA chooses between who will be a minion and who will just be a sub-minion, in other words, working for a minion or a thrall, does depend on the brain capabilities of that human. The higher IQ, the more chances that's going to become a minion. Minions are not dumb, but they will do, say, anything to feed the DMA.
And the longer a minion is in this state, even if in the beginning they had all their faculties and their brain was working very well, over time it would be leading to that dementia type state taking over the brain. Is that correct?
Very, very often that
Not always,
does happen.
But often.
No. I mean, they are in a physical body. Minions very often believe that the gifts that they were given by the DMA protects them for all time. It does not. But since they are service to self, it's not something that they're really concerned about. They're concerned about their immediate physical, power, control. They don't really, people with souls are very different than people without them who have been DMA infested. Okay. Mm-hmm. All right. Now let's move on to the next one. Let's move on to the dark sorcerer.
Yes, please.
We have 4 different types of dark sorcerers to show you. Now, a dark sorcerer is very different than a minion. In fact, minions are not in the hierarchy of DMA infestation. Minions are not at the top. Mm-hmm. There's something called puppet masters that are really above minions. The puppet masters, these are the people who give them the energy, fund them, make sure that they have everything that they need, do a lot of the brain work for them. Most puppet masters stay in the dark. Very few of them come out into the light. They don't want to. They function better in the dark, just like a vampire. Every single puppet master absolutely believes that they are a living God on Earth. It doesn't matter what era of time they lived in. Each and every one of them absolutely believes that they are living gods on the earth.
Yeah, some names spring to mind that I shan't mention as you say that.
Right, correct. And they have reason to believe that because they know behind the scenes what they're doing in this world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, again, service to self, service to the DMA. Okay. Now, it doesn't mean that puppet masters even know that the DMA exists. They don't. They believe that they are bowing down to something, dark and evil. They know they're evil, but minions, not all minions actually think, half of them think they're doing something good, but most of them know that they're involved in shenanigans and skullduggery, that they're messing with the planet in ways that it should not be messed with.
Yeah, well, one of the main tools that they use is that your empathy, using your own empathy against you.
Yeah, they have tried and true tactics. They've been using them throughout the ages, and they don't change because they've worked. Okay. Okay. So when we get to the dark sorcerers, who are at the very top of the hierarchy, dark sorcerers, we're not talking about Hogwarts here. Okay. They, unlike minions and puppet masters and sub-minions and thralls, who started off as just regular humans with soul integration, a dark sorcerer never was a human, never was a physical being of any sort. A dark sorcerer is made from out of whole cloth, out of DMA energy, any of the energies that it's collected. And some of that will be soul energy too. That's been, well, bad things have happened to it. In this form of a dark sorcerer that you're looking at, and remember, no two dark sorcerers look the same or behave the same. They each have their own responsibilities. And unknown to the minions and the sub-minions, this is who they're bowing down to. This is the evil that they believe is the ultimate, when it's not. They're actually driven, the dark sorcerers are created by the dark matter aberration. So here we have a whole lot of energy, and you can see the tentacles of dark matter aberration going out from them. And all that sparkly stuff is just, they are almost a world, a universe unto themselves. They live kind of in a pocket world to our Earth, so that they're not really in it. They're slightly apart from it. And they are the overseers of the planet, and they oversee the food stations for the DMA. They hold the whip. They make sure that every single DMA worker, no matter what they are, does their job. And if they don't, it's bad news for them. Okay, so let's move on to the next panel, which is going to show the difference between a DMA dark sorcerer and a DMA minion. Okay, great. Okay, so on the left is the first dark sorcerer that I showed you, and this is both of these are embedded into a dark matter aberration background. You can see that the dark sorcerer is filled. It has substance. Okay, while the dark matter aberration minion is just filled with dark matter aberration energy. Okay, very different. The minion is totally controlled, while the dark sorcerer, it has independent actions as an overseer. Okay, that's the difference.
Right. Okay. Reminds me of
right.
a golem. You know the story where they make the clay people and then bring them to life?
Different though.
It just
Good
reminds
idea.
me of it though, like the dark matter version of it.
Right. But these are very different. Dark sorcerers, puppet masters, minions, sub-minions, and thralls are different than that.
It's just fascinating though what it's come up with. It makes me wonder how it comes up with these things.
Well, when you get to the point of a golem, that's humans working with dark energy to build something inanimate into something animate.
Mm-hmm.
Or in some cases, you have your zombies. That's different from this. Very different. Golems can be real. dark thought forms that humans make, they can be real. Shadow people, they can be real. All that's real. This, I'm talking about a whole other level.
So the DMA, it can plan and construct and have all of, like a real brain. It can have all ideas and.
Well, the dark matter aberration has been doing this ever since the universe was formed. Mm-hmm. We're talking a gazillions and gazillions of years. So it's been doing the same shtick for all that time. It has worked out how it works. Mm-hmm. It knows what to do. And it's not a sentient being, it's dark matter.
But like a pathogen can be intelligent in your body, and the more you try to get rid of it, it kind of adapts, I guess, on an automated process to then survive.
Well, that can happen, yes, definitely. When it comes to the DMA, it creates these on-site worker bees, this hierarchy of on-site workers, and it's not micromanaging. It exists, it feeds. It already has its system down. It has a program. It inserts that program into its workers and into the thralls, which basically are as many of the population of a place that it can infest. Mm. And it lets the humans destroy themselves. So it's very sneaky. It's very sneaky stuff.
Very sneaky.
Okay? All right. So let's move on to the next panel of the next Dark Sorcerer. As you can see, it's totally different looking. This one uses a different type of DMA energy. Even the DMA doesn't say, oh, I'm going to make this form. This is what it's going to look like. No, it fills and creates from what it has. And this is what comes out. Surprise. This is what comes out, and it works through.
So interesting, really. I know it's kind of dark, but it's all very interesting.
Yeah. Well, it works through the elements of the habitat or planet that it's on. So this is that. Let's move on to the next. A whole other type of dark sorcerer filled with this type of energy. And all of this is all integrated into our planet. These dark sorcerers are the representation of evil.
And they can communicate, can they, these dark sorcerers, with minions and top of the chain.
They are the overseers.
Priests, priestesses. They can actually communicate with them, I would imagine, at the very, very top.
That's exactly what they do. They are the overseers. They set down the rules, the laws, and they give and they punish. They're very scary. Mm. These are not nice. There are no souls here. This is just pure DMA. This is the most energy that the DMA puts out is put into these dark sorcerers. Mm. Let's go on to the next. This is just another form a dark sorcerer can take. They come in all different types of colors. And like I said, each one has its own ability, and they all work together. All dark sorcerers work together, forming one cadre representing the DMA, making sure that the feeding platform is running smoothly. They are fed by the DMA, and the rebuilt protective force field does not keep the dark sorcerer from being re-energized by the DMA, because the dark sorcerer is on the other side of the rebuilt protective force field, while every single puppet master, minion, sub-minion, and thrall is on the Earth side of it. So the dark sorcerers, I don't know what happens to them, but once the entire false matrix shatters, they're out of work. They're just out of work. There's nothing for them to oversee. They will move along. There's nothing else, because once the false matrix shatters, the DMA, it can't come back into the planet. It can't refresh any of the energy to its hierarchy. So that's how the dark sorcerers are taken care of.
So now dark sorcerers are on the outside of this force field that we resurrected on the planet.
Yeah.
That means can they still interact with their minions and puppet masters here?
Sure. As long as there's a false matrix set up, as long as the minions, puppet masters, sub-minions, and thralls are still doing their deal, yes, the dark sorcerers are absolutely controlling the program.
Mm-hmm.
They're throwing the switches. They're making the decisions. The DMA is not making any other decision than creating what it created and feeding. It feeds, creates, it feeds. But it's the dark sorcerers who do the moment-to-moment overseeing. So once the false matrix has shattered and we're back into a proper matrix existence, the minions, sub-minions, puppet masters, they are either totally gone or they are so out of DMA food that they've been reduced to useless and they will just die away. Okay.
Oh, good.
Thralls, on the other hand, some of them still have their souls, some don't. If they still have their souls, they can wake up. They can wake up to realize what has happened, and they can be nurtured back into being, good, being whole, and stop believing all the nonsense that the false matrix puts out into the world to create this feeding ground for the DMA. So, about half the world are thralls.
Mm-hmm.
So and a thrall is easy to create. And they're created by the puppet masters, the minions, and the sub-minions. They each have their role, their act, their tactics, and they do it. The word false is very important in false matrix. Okay, bizarro world.
Clown world.
Clown world, whatever you want to call it.
For it.
Yeah, it's just not properly working. It's not the proper world. So
yes,
when we do get back into a proper matrix, it doesn't mean that magically we're going to be in some sort of Eden. There's a lot of hard work to do. It's going to take a long time for us to put ourselves back together and forevermore make sure that the DMA never infests our world again, and it never will. Because the protective force field that has been rebuilt will never be lost again. Because instead of just being built originally by an ET Earth Consortium, it's been rebuilt by humans and the core matrix. And yes, there are angels involved. And yes, there are some members of the ET Earth Consortium involved. It's like a whole family here.
A lot more energy went into it.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
And what's so magical about it is that humans were able to join in.
Yes, I think that's important for us to be proactive and empowered.
We are so blessed.
Yeah,
that'll be
part of our protective energetics there. Like for anyone, that's your immune system.
Yes, and it's only going to even grow stronger from here.
Yeah. Yeah, humans need to develop a kind of hygiene for things like this, understanding that spiritual hygiene needs to be in place, or frequency hygiene for your entire planet.
The false matrix falseness has to go away. And, reality has to become the way of doing things. Please go on to the next. So now what we're looking at is sort of a roundup of the show. We're still living in a false matrix world, but the false matrix is shattering. It's shattering because Earth protective force field has been rebuilt and reactivated. But what you see on the left is still here. Now, it's very important to understand, and I've talked about this a lot, that even though the false matrix is shattering, and that's a very wonderful thing, it's really making the puppet masters, the DMA puppet masters and DMA minions and sub-minions very nervous. They can see that the world that they created, that they've been, mastering for so long, is on the verge of ending. And because of this, they are throwing everything and the kitchen sink into the world at the non-thralls in order to try to stop the shattering of the false matrix. But that's what they do. So because of that, they are revealing themselves. They are revealing who they are and what they are. which is something they've been hiding for thousands of years. But when you take every piece of your plan that's, been cloaked and you throw it out into the light, suddenly people are going, what? What's that? What's going on?
You hope they're saying that. They should be saying that.
And so in effect, the DMA puppet masters, minions, sub minions are actually helping the false matrix shattering to move along.
Jolly good.
Because this is awakening a lot of the thralls to the false matrix world that they've been thrust into. It's just one of those ironies. But on the darker side, because of what the DMA workers are doing, it's pushing us quicker and faster toward that time looping, planet ending, nuke, smithereening world problem. It's trying to crash. It's crashing the planet at a pace that is making the false matrix even more unsustainable, but even quicker. And this is creating a lot of suffering, disasters, heartache. There is a better way.
Yeah, people always tend to think that those things, it's just inevitable, or it's just happening, it's beyond anyone's control. I think one really important thing to realize is that no, it's being done.
It's being done.
It's being done.
Right, being done to the planet. It's not natural. Not natural. There are a lot of problems in our world which need to be fixed that will take a long time. And it doesn't mean that every single thing put forward during the false matrix is wrong. There are some good things that will remain and will be worked on to make them better. It's the way that they're posited, the way that they're positioned, which has added to the false matrix. There's a way to have those things and add to the proper matrix.
Yeah, totally.
Humans, in the proper matrix, humans are a lot more aware, a lot smarter. They're a lot connected to their souls and the universe. So right now we are in the darkest of times on purpose. But the DMA puppet masters and minions and sub-minions didn't really want it to go down this way, but they stepped into it. They have no choice. They can't help who they are. Evil is going to be evil. You can't fault evil for being evil, but you can fault non-evil for doing nothing.
Right.
Because when somebody sees something bad happening and you don't do anything about it, you become an enabler of that. So we have a lot. Yeah, we have a lot of DMA enablers.
Totally.
A lot of puppet master, minion, sub-minion, thrall enablers. Okay. We are supposed to be one united planet, the caretakers of the planet. We're not supposed to be at each other's throats. And, champions will rise. Everyday people.
Yeah, the rise of the roar.
The rise of the roar. It's about uniting the light. It's about being the frequency. It's about being earth strong. This is who we really are. So never give up, never give in. There is a way out of the darkness, and all of you are it.